Well, it's time to move on towards the next session, and it's going to be the Fireside Chat on building a strong compliance culture. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have the very first person with us, Mr. Hilal Ahmad, CISO Razorpay. He has more than 15 years of experience in cybersecurity. He has held several leadership positions and was the CISO of Dream 11. I'm sure we all know about it. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a next speaker along with him, Mr. Pratyush Kukreja, Business Head, APAC, Scrut Automation, who runs growth for APAC markets at Scrut and comes from a decade of experience of working with BFSI and enterprise customers, most recently at Geo Haptic. So let's put our hands together and please welcome Mr. Hilal Ahmad and Mr. Pratyush Kukreja on stage.
Thanks a lot, Hilal, coming over on a Friday evening. So you come from a very special pedigree of experience, right? You have worked across geographies, Southeast Asia, then US, and now in India. You have worked across industries, fintech, now in the payment space, earlier in gaming, travel as well. What has your sort of learning been across this experience on building a strong cybersecurity and a compliance culture?
So first of all, thanks, Pratyush. I think it's always a pleasure to be here. It's like whenever you think of an organization that's working really well towards its goals, right? You cannot afford not to have like a strong culture of compliance and security in the organization. So those are some of the fundamental building blocks for your organization to have a really good business model. And the objectives of the business basically may not be to be the best secure company in the world, because that's not the business, right? For them to be able to basically do good business and to make sure that things are done the right way, and they want to make sure that the innovation and all those things like are not basically hindered by compliance requirements or security requirements, right? It's very important to have a very strong culture of compliance and security. So in order for a company to have like good security culture, right, so it has to basically have a not just like a top-down approach where everybody's invested, right from the CEO, the board, and the executives, right? So it has to be basically a common shared objective for the organization, right? Earlier, Mr. Ganeshan said, okay, like he was actually he mentioned that okay, we should not use compliance as like a stick that we actually make everybody submit to that, right? So it's not necessarily about that, right? So it's basically making sure that it actually brings some value to the organization, and that value has to be objectified. And when you put that into perspective in the overall business objectives, right, it becomes really clear that okay, we need to have a strong culture of security and compliance.
Right, got it. No, that's very interesting. But just let's dive a little deeper into this. So Sunil ji earlier mentioned in his opening remarks that Indian fintech is like peeling an onion, right? And operating in the fintech space also does bring tears to lots of leaders. You have a compliance program that's extremely tight, extremely strong, and you slow the organization down. And if it's too lax, it loses its essence. So how do you really define that balance of that allows you to operate at scale, but also is fast enough?
Yeah, so earlier, basically, like when you were sort of like giving my introduction, you mentioned that, okay, I was come from different verticals, right? So one of them is like gaming, which is like completely non-regulated space. So most of the compliance basically is like you are being self-compliant, right? You tend to basically like, see, one of the reasons that anybody has a compliance program is to basically give an assurance to their customers and their investors that, okay, they are doing things the right way. And every single time they have a consistency in making sure that they protect the customer data, they protect the trust the customers have in the organization. And particularly in fintech, which I am basically part of right now, it deals with money, right? So, and money is very sensitive for everybody, right? So any financial transaction, recon transaction or whatever, like the data actually that flows through our network, right? So our customers, our partners actually trust us with their money, they trust us with their data. So it's very important for us to make sure that we have a visible way of showing that, okay, we are taking care of it, right? And what happens is that like every single time when we want to do something, like we have to do it like the right way and in the right context. Earlier, Navneet was actually mentioning that, okay, for a defender of the network or a defender of security, right? So you have to basically be basically consistently at 1,000 times. You have to be actually like make sure that you do the right thing. But for an attacker, like out of 1,000 attempts, only one attempt is actually like more than enough. So which means that the compliance is basically going to be the driver that makes you sure that you have some consistency and predictability in making sure that you have a resilient infrastructure, you have a resilient basically like business. And that's how you actually show the trust basically in a visible way to your customers that, okay, everything is actually being taken care of and you don't have to worry about it. And that's basically the primary driver for basically having a compliance program in fintechs or gaming or whatever. So it's like fintech being such heavily regulated, there's a reason for it, right? And we should obviously not be resistant towards it. It's an enabler, right, for the business. It's an enabler for us to make sure that we have the right practices in place. At the same time, it can be challenging. Like it can be that onion which brings tears to our eyes, right?
Correct.
But that doesn't mean that it's going to be something that's detrimental to your innovation or security. Right? It's always going to be a welcome thing once you actually get hold of all the nuts and bolts of the compliance requirements.
Right.
You map your requirements, you map your controls, you map your licenses, everything, right? Once you actually have done that exercise, it doesn't need to be basically like you don't have to basically build a well every single time.
Correct.
So you can optimize it, you can evolve with the existing control requirements, you can evolve with the licensing requirements, your reporting requirements, right? So all of that can be actually basically like modeled and evolved and optimized, given that you actually set the benchmarks and you set your foundations very well.
Right. So, Razorpay already is the largest payment gateway in the country. It's a gold mine of data to any hacker. The baseline of the base security program that you have internally are already very high. What else do you think with such scale, unique vulnerabilities come in? So how do you sort of raise the bar, and what new initiatives or investments do you do to make it even tighter?
Yeah, so like I said, right, so we have basically, it's like a journey, we never stop, right? So every organization that I have worked with is at a certain stage in their life cycle, right? Which actually somehow, what I have felt and what I have noticed is basically corresponding to the maturity of your security or compliance program. You start with basically like the foundational basically level, right? So which you actually get the basics right. Then over a period of time, you evolve those basically requirements and you actually basically mature a little bit more. And then at some time, like you have to basically be optimized and you have to be at a stage where everything becomes like predictable. And to be able to basically predict what is going to be how your organization is going to be targeted and what sort of data is going to be of interest to basically malicious actors and things like that. So you always have to basically think about, okay, like how and why, right? So what is of interest in your organization to somebody who can actually use some method that have not been discovered yet. So all of these things, like when you have to basically scale security and compliance with the requirements, right? So you tend to basically think about not just the foundational things that you have. You want to make sure that like your controls actually mature as well as your business matures, right? So for example, like I'll give like, so for example, earlier, like everybody thinks about identity intelligence, like they think about security intelligence, they think about basically behavioral anomaly and things like that, right? So all of those things, when you combine together, so you actually have to have a really, really good basically identifying mechanism. You need to have a detection framework really, really strong, and you need to have a prevention framework very strong. So meaning that like each of these are like non-negotiable pieces of your infrastructure, and you have to make sure that in order for it to scale, you need basically to have everybody invested in that, right? Not just from the budgetary point of view, right? So you also basically like you may have the best of the breed tools in your organization, but if people do not take advantage of that, it's of no use, right? So you want to basically make sure that when you're actually introducing tooling or you're introducing automation or you're introducing any kind of state-of-the-art basically like service, right? You want to make sure that people are actually like on board with that, right? So if people are not on board with that, and if it does not actually correspond to your requirements, no use at all. So that's how I think the key to basically scaling your compliance and security is to basically make sure that everybody in the organization is basically invested in any kind of security innovation or any type of basically like advancement you want to do.
Understood. Also, recently, generative AI has been talk of the town. We talk about social engineering as a strategy for attack for orchestrating some of these attacks. What opportunities and what threats does generative AI really bring to the fore, and how should a fintech CISO really prepare for it?
I think we already foretold it in the security community, right? So Navneet earlier showed us a slide that it takes less than 30 seconds to basically uncover a gold mine of information about you. So which is like in itself is like such an advanced way of basically like correlating the data that you really don't have to basically think about some very advanced models that actually can be used to gather information for social engineering, targeted attacks, and phishing, everything like that. So in terms of basically like using AI and basically like generative basically AI for basically doing social engineering, things like incredibly important, right? Incredibly sensitive as well, right? So a lot of people think that, okay, what is the new thing that it can actually bring? But I was like surprised that it may seem like very like I think if security folks here have worked in basically on the defense incident response and things like that, or reverse engineering and things like that, one of the things that we used to do was basically debug applications, right, and basically figure out, okay, what is the malicious code that's actually running into that. It used to take a couple of days running it. Basically, you want to basically reverse engineer the code, you want to basically run a debugger simulator, and you want to basically see what are the entry points and exit points, what are the basically like the where exactly the memory is involved and things like that. It used to take days together, right? So, and I had done that, and I was like always frustrated with why it's not faster, right? So now I was like, I did it like a couple of months back. I actually uploaded a malware on one of these AI sites, and it gave me a result in less than 1 minute. Like whatever I needed, like I asked it, what are the entry points? It actually gave me that. What are basically like where it can be, where the buffers can be overflown and things like that, it gave me that. What are the basically volatile memory locations? It gave me that. And what are the basically the IOCs for us to basically build on that, which is basically the rules that we need to build to protect from DDoS and all those things, or the data exfiltration and things like that. It actually dumped that entire data in less than a minute. So you can imagine, like, if what used to take like a couple of days is actually getting done in a minute. So you can imagine like how much impact the generative AI can have on basically the security and compliance postures across the organizations.
Right. So with all technology, it's as good as the hands that it's in, right? So
Sure.
the same information in the hands of a CISO is great, but in the
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
right, got it. So okay, so we'll just have some more fun now that I have the spotlight on you. To conclude the fireside chat, we'll have a small rapid fire discussion.
Sure.
I'll throw a bunch of rapid fire questions, and we'll see how quickly you're able to do the response management on those. What's your favorite cybersecurity themed movie or series?
Very, very interesting. So, yeah, I think everybody expects me to say Mr. Robert, but it's not. So I actually liked a show that used to come in like 2006, 2009, 10. It was called Chuck. Has anybody seen Chuck? Chuck is a really good show. I really love that because it has everything, right? It has science fiction. It has basically some bit of comedy. It has a bit of it has bit of everything, right?
Got it.
So I love that show. Yeah.
Got it. We'll definitely check that out. What pickup line would you use on as a security professional?
Not that sort of a guy. Yeah.
Well, that can also work maybe. If you could have a superpower to enhance cybersecurity, what would it be?
Everybody to have basically enough information to understand that they do not necessarily need to click on some links, right? So that would be a big superpower I would like to have.
Got it. What's your favorite password of all time?
Favorite password of all time, pineapple.
Ah, nice. Is that to your net banking as well? If you could hack into any fictional character's computer, which one would it be?
Yoda, I think. But has anybody seen Yoda actually using a computer?
I haven't.
Yeah, if he has a computer, I would love to see basically hack into that.
Nice, got it. So that's all. That's all I had for
Yeah,
today.
thank you, Pratyush. It's always a pleasure to be here, right? So
Yes.
I'm allowed to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.